Welcome everybody as you're coming in. We're going to let people get settled a little bit, and then we'll go through some logistics and some introductions and such to be able to get rolling. Yeah. Let me pull up a couple things here. While you all are getting settled, it would be awesome if you could find the webinar chat. If you're not familiar with Zoom, it should be at the bottom of your screen. On my screen, it's more or less right here, but may differ for you. So you can open up the chat and throw out who you are, introduction, just so you can find it. Make sure it says to everyone. If you're not familiar with Zoom, sometimes it defaults to the hosts and panelists, in which case you'll only be talking to us. But we want you to be able to interact with each other in the chat. So if you're just coming in, open up the chat, throw out who you are, where you're from, and that's where we're going to take questions so that you can work it. We will pay attention to the Q&A pod but often we prefer those questions to come out into chat, because sometimes you all have interesting things to add that we can then introduce into the conversation as well, because often some of the coolest things come from the community of folks that are in here. So couple other things on logistics while we're getting settled. We are recording this. David will be sending it out. We will probably turn it into a written blog post format as well. It's a new process we're working on, so I can't promise that 100%, but a possible written format of it as well. And so you'll be able to get some follow-up of resources from this, and we will also share resources that we share in the chat throughout. We will send those out in email afterwards, so you don't have to worry about taking as much copious notes and or grabbing resources. Obviously grab them if you want, but David will be following up on all of those as well. So pretty cool. All right, I think that's enough on logistics. Let's get to introductions. So my name is Marcus. I'm one of the owners of Harmonized Learning, in charge of the product side and finding cool things that customers will do. And I'm always out talking to people who are doing things with our tools. And this whole webinar series that we've been running this fall is all about things that are not necessarily Harmonized centric, but are pedagogy centric, and are ways that are, here are some good practices that can help us sort of combat AI use while still doing things that are good for our students. And that's what this whole series is about. So I'll be Allison and I will be going through different things. So Allison, if you want to introduce yourself, then I can throw to sort of the content of what we're going to be covering today.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. My name is Allison Mike. I'm a recovering middle school science teacher and made the leap to nonprofits about 15, 20 years ago, and then into higher ed. And currently I serve as the Dean of Faculty in Gen Ed at University of Silicon Valley. And I'm excited to be here with you today and hopefully get some good tips from you as well.
Yeah, so by all means, ask questions. Can't stress that enough in the chat. Throw them out, points, comments, things that you think other people in the audience should know. We will often pull those into voice as well and mention them so people who aren't paying attention to the chat can see them. And so here's what we're going to go through today. As I mentioned, good pedagogy, but also this whole AI threat. The thing that when I was talking to Allison that jumped out at me that I was like, oh, we need to do a series on this, is that they lean heavily into peer review for what they do with their students. And a lot of you are probably thinking, peer review, that is an English only thing, right? So I'm actually have a word cloud I'd love everybody to participate in that I'm going to drop out into the chat here while I am talking about sort of introducing this topic to some degree. There's chat there. You can just throw what subject areas you think are applicable to peer review, and we will see the results come in as we go. The argument that we're going to make here, and the thing that I would love you to take away from this is that peer review is applicable in a lot of places you didn't think of it is, and think of it in terms of using it in a subject area. And there's a lot of benefits to it that people haven't often thought about in terms of how it can help sort of combat AI use. And so if you're thinking about peer review, you probably think, oh, review a paper, review an essay. But we're going to broaden that out as well and say, well, if you're peer reviewing and you're peer reviewing things that are not just text, but are multimedia in some way, screen share, video, imagery, whatever it is, the whole combined package of peer motivation because students are critiquing each other's work, plus peer review, peer critique, because now they are on the hook and responsible to each other for some of the learning, as well as naturally combating AI because we're talking about multimodal, be it video, images, the things that are harder for AI to do. All of these things together lead to really cool engagement and sort of an authentic classroom that can be basically more resilient to AI. We don't say AI proof or anything because there's always going to be students who cheat. And when I was talking to Allison, and they started using our peer review tool, which is how this came up, and we'll talk about our peer review tool towards the end if you're interested. But she started describing where they're using it, and my mind was just kind of blown because I was like, you're using it in classes I've just never heard of people using it in, and so that's kind of the synopsis of what we're going to go through here. Allison, is that fair? Did I miss anything I should have covered in terms of?
I think you hit it all. Yeah, spot
Okay.
on.
All right, and so the other thing we're going to talk about is like if you all are, if I don't know how many folks are educators in the room versus leadership, DE, instructional design. A lot of it also comes up in terms of how hard is it to implement peer review? Like what am I actually doing? How do I get it to work in my class, et cetera? And so let me go on to uh, the next word cloud I'd love people to participate in here is like, what kind of problems do you see trying to incorporate peer review into your class? And how do you how then we can address some of the things because Allison has done tons of work with her professors and herself around how to combat some of these, and so maybe as she sees them jump out, she can talk about them. So in terms of things I've heard from the reason we built some of our peer review tools is there's a lot of setup involved. There's a lot of headaches of getting students to peer review each other and guiding them through the process, and how do I grade all of these things. How do I actually how do I get this process to work? So it's less about the peer review itself being a problem, because pedagogically, if that word is a little hard to say, that's pretty straightforward. But what kind of pain do you see in it? So we
The,
only have,
the student confusion one, that one is just so true. I was chatting with Marcus and David before we start. I do a little bit of facilitation occasionally for instructor because I'm a certified educator and working on my administrative certification. And peer review is part of the certified educator course. And I had forgotten how clunky and hard that is to set up. And just even not only the students are confused, I always used to be confused where who had done the reviews, who hadn't done them, who was left to do them, who hadn't turned anything in. So all of those things are, those are big, they're big roadblocks. And that was a lot of the challenges that we were facing when we started this. So that one just popped out to me there, Marcus. So of all of
yeah, no,
those.
that's awesome. And the grading logistics for those that aren't aware. So we'll talk a little bit about tools. Actually, let's talk about tools now because some of these things you can combat with tools. And so I just want you to have this comfort of, we have some solutions for you out there in the world. Not all of them are harmonized. So we're not here just to sell harmonize. We're not even going to talk much about it till the end. But there are a lot of tools that you can do to accomplish these things, to deal with some of these confusion issues and the grading, et cetera. Um, I would, I'm going to go bold here and say I would steer you away from Canvas peer review if you haven't tried it, because it is fraught with logistics problems. When you're trying to grade, you can't actually see everything the student has done into their peer reviews, and it's really hard to set up and manage and such. So I'm just going to put an X through that one of like, unless you're really good and familiar with Canvas peer review and are comfortable with it, I wouldn't go that route in terms of dealing with peer review. But a lot of people use standard discussions for this. And there are a few other peer review tools on the market that you can take a look at. Harmonize just released ours. Feedback Fruits is a big player in this market that has multimodal peer review. Peerceptive and Critic are the other two. So the four big tools to do it. But if you don't own any of these tools and you don't have budget for tools, you're going to be able to accomplish what Allison is going through with standard discussions in your LMS. Although Allison, if maybe I had this later in the agenda, but like your instructors were going all across the board and doing different ways of doing this. So do you want to start with that? And then as we roll into the examples, they will make some sense.
Sure. Yeah. So just to give you a little background why peer reviews are so important, we're a creative school. We're gaming, digital arts, digital animation, audio tech. And so for kind of a philosophy we have across our organization is we want students doing peer review right out of the gates as soon as they start their journey with us, because we feel like that is such a key skill to learn, because it takes place so much in students who are taking jobs in the gaming industry or audio tech and things like that. But as Marcus said, Canvas is just clunky. And I mean, I've used it for years, but it still hasn't made it any easier to use. I always get confused. Students get confused, and then half the time I'm logging in as a student trying to figure out what they see to give examples. And so, yeah, I agree with Marcus, stay away. One of the ways that we were using it for our instance was just using the discussion. And so we would use the discussion tool where students would post their work, and usually a pinned conversation at the top from the instructor, and sort of making the instructor manually created lists of all right, Marcus, you're going to peer review Allison's, and Allison's going to do David's. And we just posted everything in a discussion. So there was a lot of transparency in terms of students could see what other students were doing. They could also, they knew who they had to give a peer review to. But it was clunky. And the other piece is that oftentimes I saw faculty say, do a peer review, and students didn't know what to do. And so we were kind of hobbling together different pieces of directions and things like that. It worked okay. It was not a great process. Students liked it, even the clunkiness using a discussion tool. But part of it, the struggle we had was just having clear directions on how to just even do a peer review. Some of us were creating rubrics, but then we had to teach students how to use a rubric effectively. And if we didn't give them instructions and gave them a rubric, it just became this convoluted thing. So we did come kind of to a conclusion. We were going to use the discussion tool. We kind of came up with I came up with some guidelines, which I shared with faculty about how to do peer reviews, but it wasn't the best in the world, but it worked. We even had some of our faculty that were using, we're a Microsoft shop, but students use a lot of Google as well. So our faculty were setting up things in a Microsoft document or a Google Doc, and having students sort of peer review certain sections of a doc, and the instructor would dump all the work in a folder or in a doc, and people would go back and forth. So there was lots of different ways to work around it. Just posting in the discussions was probably the easiest, but it was clunky. And faculty did it reluctantly because we didn't really have a good process to do it. And so that's kind of where we came up with if we're going to do this, we've got to figure out a better way. And that's kind of where Harmonize came in for us. And again, there's other tools that can do it. Harmonize has just made it so much easier for us that's been kind of a game changer.
So so we'll come back to sort of the tools aspect, and especially some of the grading as we go on, but I want to come back to the different subject areas that people are going to use this for, and let's get into some examples of some of to help brainstorm some of these. So I hadn't looked at these yet before we moved on, but speech, performance, simulation, lab work, art, political science. I like all in the center. That means you all are in the right mindset. A question came in from Heather asking in the chat that I want to address as we're rolling into some of these examples from Allison's school to be able to help brainstorm. The reason that peer review is a good step away from ChatGPT is that you can't stop students from putting stuff into ChatGPT, but if you are encouraging the students to submit things that are not pure text, they're recording a video on their phone and uploading, reflecting on their learning process, or they are, screen sharing, either, I mean, we do this natively in Harmonize, but you can send students out to many, many, many tools that are free that can do screen sharing, and then they're recording and presenting and such. Those are much harder for AI to get at the meat of what's going on and processing them. And so we're looking at doing things that are more engaging for students, while also adding more friction to the process of trying to get it into AI. So it's not proof, AI proof. There's nothing that's AI proof, but it's like if you add enough friction and you make it engaging enough, the majority of the students will I think participate without purely funneling it onto AI. And Allison, in a previous discussion, you were like, some students still do it and you don't think you care. Is that still true?
I mean, I guess that I appreciate your comment, Heather, 100%, because I'm with you there. at the end of the day, like, yeah, do I have students that do it? Yes, because I mean, we all can get to a point now that we see something, it's like, oh yeah, that's AI. And so it's such a small number for me. It's like, I'm not going to police the ones that are using that. I just like to spend a lot more time lifting up those students who are doing the peer review correctly. And sometimes they've even had students say, did you use AI to do this? And so they're calling on, they're calling each other out on it. At the end of the day, it's generally a small number. Most of the students really enjoy doing peer reviews now. And because they know that doing a good peer review, they generally will get a good peer review back. And a lot of it's from my perspective, at least in my class, and what I've seen as some of my other faculty do, is really lift up students who are doing really good peer reviews that that are not AI driven. We do a lot of synchronous courses where there's a peer review, and then the faculty sort of shares that work and a little bit of the peer review. Some we keep anonymous, a lot of them we don't, particularly in our art classes and our digital animation classes. And in doing that, students are seeing how other people are doing peer reviews. So it has like diminished our AI reviews. And as Marcus said, like our speech class, because I know speech is on here, he started out from the very beginning of the term. We're not typing anything. Everything is done in video. So we use Harmonize for his weekly discussions or video. The students respond via video. Peer reviews are all done via video. That's a hard thing to say 3 times right. And so again, just sort of shifting the way. And I think the other piece I would say, Heather, is that we have decided as a faculty, we have tried like doing the AI detection software and so forth like that. And instead of trying to create more gotcha moments, we're just trying to change behavior. And it's like, hey, if you want to use that, we can't stop you. But at the end of the day, when an employer is saying that you can only go to AI to do anything and you're not knowing how to use AI effectively, that's going to put you at a disadvantage for employment. So a lot of what we're doing is more behavior modification and change around AI versus really a lot of penalties, because we'd be doing it all day.
And there's some fascinating research out there that actually shows like one of the best ways to combat cheating, and not specifically AI cheating, but just cheating in general, is motivation. And that's where I think peer review and sort of this peer pressure, if you will. I did good for you, you did good for me. I guess it's I did well for you, you did well for me. But that type of motivation, as well as the instructor, like from an instructor workload perspective, to be able to see what the students are saying to each other, jump in and see where that one point that was being focused on and offer your constructive motivation and feedback and such, like drives up the students' belief that like, oh, this matters and the instructor cares and my fellow students care and therefore I care.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. So
I'm going to switch over. This next thing is something Allison put together. I'm going to share out the link into the chat so you guys have it as a takeaway. It's I turned it into a Google Doc so I could easily share it. So any formatting issues are mine. Allison had as a PDF that she shared with me. And this is kind of some of the examples she's going to walk through. She'll give you some color, but we are going to share this afterwards so that you can remember some of the things she was talking about as well, and use it to maybe drive some conversations in what you're doing. So I think at this point, Allison, example driven, I'll leave this up on the screen, and when we get down, I'll scroll through them,
sure.
march through which ones you think are best or not, spend time as you see fit speaking through it, and talk about the pros and cons, anything you got on this.
So one of the things that like I said, we do a lot of peer review. It's sort of an expectation for all of our faculty to do at least one peer review. We have a lot of online classes. We're kind of now 60% online, 40% campus. And because of that, we want students to have opportunities to engage with each other. So that sort of has really pushed on where we're going to use peer reviews and in differently. And so, for example, I teach a foundations class. And in my class, students are learning how to like create presentations so that they're not death by PowerPoint, and they get to pick a certain topic of their choice and so forth like that. And what I use my class for is that they share their first drafts of their presentations with each other. And what's been really fun about that is that most of my students are like true freshmen. This is one of their first classes they take when they come to us. And, they've done presentations in either high school or other places, and they're, just awful. And there are a lot of just death by PowerPoint, so much text and so forth like that. So we talk about how you should be presenting in terms of like gaming or video or animation and so forth like that. And so students start seeing each other, how they're doing it. And it's like the final presentations that get turned in are so much better because students are not trying to create a presentation in isolation. And so many students want to see what other people are doing. The peer review has opened that up. And now I have students, they're doing a design thinking component in my course right now. And for their last component, they have to like create a marketing piece, like um, they can create an Instagram, a product sheet or something like that. And they all asked, can they see each other's? Can we do a peer review of this? Because we want to see what other people are doing. And so they're asking for it because they just like that opportunity to see what other people are doing. And it's like I said, the number of presentations that are so good have been super helpful. The next one on there is English.
Wait,
And I
wait,
think,
wait.
yeah,
I love this one. So I want to dwell on this
yeah,
one a little more.
yeah,
The thing that struck me about this is that presentations is a job skill, right? Like it's whenever I'm meeting with my product team and we're talking about things to do, they run presentations, they talk about things, they present. So and no matter what the subject area, if you can coherently pull your information together and present it to an audience, you had to know it well enough to condense it down to a format. You had to speak about it. Public speaking, great, also for most jobs, type of thing. And so this one, even though it was in a foundations class, I'm like, I could almost just see any class, be it beginning or advanced. It's a skill that they need to develop, and you can't present a material until you truly know it,
yeah.
type of thing. So I love this. We even had there's a guy from Polk State. David, can you maybe go find the webinar from our website around the Polk State um, first year college experience class if you can. We had an instructor do something similar, which I didn't even think about, Alex, and he didn't peer review them, but he shared them in class, and they had to actually take that first year experience class, and then they had to say what they liked most about the first year experience class, what was most pertinent to them, how did it tie into their career, and so they were making it authentic to their own learning as well and doing a presentation of it. I talked to him, he said they might turn it into a peer critique, but they're not sure the workload is there yet for that first year class, but it's applicable everywhere, which I think
Yeah.
is a great example.
So English class, I think everybody kind of has a sense of that. So I won't really spend a lot of time there. I'll come back to physics if there's time, because that's when I don't want to be like, it's all my classes, but I want to talk about what our other faculty are doing.
You're welcome to be totally egocentric, Allison. It's
I
fine.
know. But I really think some of the people are doing some really cool things. So we have a digital video production class, and they're actually making short films using their iPhones. And it has always been an online course. It's been synchronous, and a lot of the synchronous was instructing students how to make like the different components of these the digital video. But what our instructor did this time, since I introduced him to the peer review tool, is every week when they have another segment of their video, he is having them do peer reviews of each other. And the quality of videos that are coming out of this class this early, I mean, we're in the middle of the term, I guess, but they're astounding because they just know whatever they're going to do every week, they are going to have 2 to 3, sometimes 4 people peer review their video in small sections. So it's not, the other thing that, we're learning around this is that if you're doing a big project and having people peer review, that's one thing. But these are small little snippets that they're doing every week. So they're practicing a particular skill around their digital video, and that's what they're going to showcase. So it's not like students are watching 20-minute videos of the thing, but it's how are the students implementing this aspect into digital video. So they show a little clip, and then they get feedback from each other. But the quality of the videos that are coming out of this class are astounding. And I would say that the instructor would say the same thing. It's really because of the peer review. He goes, I can't give that much feedback. There's not enough hours in the day. But now these students are just like giving each other really good critiquing feedback to each other in a way that it's elevating the product that they're creating.
This is another one where video harder for AI to do. So also good, but also universal design for learning. If people aren't familiar with that, like everything doesn't have to be text. And so having people put together a TikTok video demonstrating something fun about the topic that they're doing can even be done that way, right? So this is purely, Allison, were they working on the techniques of making a video, or was it content of the video,
Both,
or
both. They have they're at the end of this term, they actually have to create a full length. I think it's like a 10 or 15-minute like animation short. But throughout they're learning another skill that they're like from the storyboarding, and I don't know all the particular things, but like the story, like their storyline, their storytelling, their storyboarding, and all of those pieces. Every week they peer review how they're implementing the learning for that week.
Yelena, I'll demonstrate some samples of the video with peer review report towards the end, because I'll do that in Harmonize. Otherwise, it's a Canvas discussion or LMS discussion type thing. But towards the end, I'll do a demo of how you can do some of this stuff and ways to think about it as well, just from a critique perspective. So I like the digital video one because I was thinking of it less as techniques and more of just content. Like if your students are accustomed to pulling out that phone and being all Instagramish. That's my Instagram face, in case you're wondering. Obviously the gray beard means I'm not as savvy on video as kids these days. But I love that just from the UDL perspective of they're doing something that's fun. They're video natives, they're digital natives, and they can put that stuff out there. And it's just way more engaging for their fellow students to watch and listen and read and read the content if they want that's attached to it, but it still has a video aspect to it.
And they're using AI tools to create their videos too. So that's the other piece of this is like, how are they using the tools in creating these videos? So like pretty much any type of digital video anymore has some sort, I mean, almost any software has some sort of AI baked into it. So he's also teaching them how to use the AI. And that's a lot of what they're sharing is like, you know, how they use the AI to create these like video, this full-length video, but like the segment for that week, he has a different AI agent that they use every week to help them create that. So it's also giving students a lot of exposure on how to use different AI tools in their area of study. So
the other thing that's awesome, I didn't even know that. That's cool. I guess I should
yeah.
have read more closely. That's also incorporating AI into the process. So we have explicitly said this is how to use AI. Therefore, this is the okay part, and that part over there not okay,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I will say, like the guy who's teaching this was one of our deans, and he was a little reluctant about this. And I said, you know, my thing was try it like the first week, Jim, and if it works out well, great. If it's not, then don't do it. He is now probably one of my best evangelists about the importance of this because it has been a game changer for him in terms of how students are learning from each other. And he's more of a facilitator rather than saying, all right, you know, like the traditional like sage on the stage sort of thing. So it's just been a really fun class to watch to see how he's using that.
I love that shift too, because a lot of people, some of the hesitation we hear from instructors is like, I can't look at all of these documents they submit and look at all of the peer reviews. It's just too much. But you're not the one given the critique anymore, so you save some time there. You know, and I don't know how the balance comes out in the end. Like, is it a net zero or is it still a touch more work, but is it worthwhile work? Because I don't know, Allison, if you have a feel for that.
You know, I would say for me, it's true. I mean, I think initially teaching students how to use the peer review and how to do it. I mean, it's easy to do, honestly, and harmonize, but once they've done it and I give them feedback on how they're doing it, my workload has dropped a lot. So I'm actually doing a lot more peer reviews because students like it. And I feel like they are learning just as much, if not more, from each other than they can just from feedback from each week. So it's a mix, but I would say my workload has probably dropped a little bit by using more peer reviews. So yeah. So this next one is super fun. This in our audio tech, this was one of our audio tech instructors. And I had been kind of telling him about how, you know, can we think about ways to use peer review in your course? And he came up with this one, and it's like amazing when I watched it. So he is teaching students basically if they're setting up an audio for like a concert, for a movie, for soundscaping, or whatever they're doing, they have to do a room analysis to figure out what they're going to have to do, where they're going to have to place speakers, where they're going to have to, you know, mitigate some things on their soundboard, some of the outside noises and things like that. So he gives them different scenarios of what these like production rooms might look like. So it could be like a concert hall. What are they going to do? How are they going to change things? And so students sort of look at this thing and then they come up with their plan for the audio setup for that room. And students then give each other feedback on that setup. And what he's found, it's actually been a game changer in terms of work for him because he would be looking at all of these different plans that students would have to run an audio setup in a specific instant, like again, a concert hall or you know, a film set or something like that. And he's having to give all of this feedback. And it was really, really a time suck. Now, is he still giving feedback? Yes, but so much of it's being given by the students that he said a lot of what I can do is like, I agree with the feedback that you're being given by this because the students are really drilling down into things so much better. So students are getting a lot more feedback with each other than probably just him alone. I think it was just a really unique way of using peer feedback.
Very cool. I was thinking about this, and I should have asked this up front. Can people throw out, if you're teaching a subject, like, can people throw out in the chat what they're teaching? And we can adapt some of these ideas for what you're teaching as well, perhaps, if we can. Sometimes we may not be able to, but we can try, and we can cover some of that towards the end as well, or if it laces into the specific example as well. You're also
Okay.
welcome if you see this example and you're like, oh, that could apply to my subject area because I could do X, Y, Z. Throw that out in the chat as well, and then other people can take that tidbit and roll with it.
Um, so I'm going to go to the informative speech, and I think I can probably even hit the psychology one. I'm looking up that one and maybe even the writing. So in our speech class, students have to do a demonstration speech, and they can pick whatever they want about to demonstrate. We're trying to get them to do it in areas of study and so forth. But what he did just to sort of get students in this mindset is he asked faculty to do a demonstration video. And so we had several faculty who created demonstration videos, and I can think of one who actually was teaching students how to crochet. And now students are going to peer review the faculty's videos on how well they did a demonstration speach. And so he's sort of flipped the
Oh,
tables.
you made me nervous just thinking about it.
I know. Claire, I did one. Claire did one on uh, uh, like I said, crochet. I'm trying to think what some of the other ones were. But students were like all over this. And the funny part was, it's like, can we, like, if they didn't do something really well, can we tell them that they didn't do something really well? And it's like, yes. And so we're trying to get students in that sort of mindset that, like, peer review is an opportunity for your growth in terms of your own writing and speaking and so forth. I would say something about like our psychology. We have a teacher of psychology of gaming. And so what she's doing for peer review is students had to pick a video game and that illustrates some of the psych concepts that she's been going over. And they are like they show up, they bring a short clip of that video segment that they're talking about. They have to create a narrative about why this is a good example of that psych concept, and then they peer review each other's. So, and you just said psychology, and like I said, ours has just got a gaming spin, but you could definitely do that with I think in any types of psychology, like where do you see this being applied, and then having students critique each other with that. So yeah, so those are some ones that I do. And I think the other one that I might just throw out there that might kind of is the one I do. I teach a physics class as well. And mine is all physics for gaming and animation and audio tech students. So most of their peer reviews it's very similar to what I said about the psych thing, is they find a video game that has an example of the physics concept that we're talking about, and they have to show the video, explain the physics concepts that are happening, and then they peer review each other if students really agree that that's a good example of that physics concept in the game. They can also choose to submit their own games, because a lot of our students, by the time they get to physics, they're already in some of the gaming engines or some of the animation tools, and they're making their own animations, or they're making their own video games. And so they can throw up their video game like, hey, I incorporated Newton's law in this video game or this animation I made. And then they provide feedback on each other around that, not only the concepts, but how they're doing it in the gaming tool or the audio tool, or even just a video clip. So that's just a couple of different ways that we're using it as well.
So a couple comments and questions came in that we can jump to and address. One of them I think maybe was meant to go to everyone in the chat, but came to host and panelists, so I'll submit it anonymously, and the person who sent it can claim it in chat if they'd like. Anytime there's a research component to a project work or something, having students go do research and summarize their research, and then ask them to sort of peer review the research that was given and whether it's applicable or not. That way the students are building a body of research together. They're doing thorough research and when they're guiding them through it all. So they end up with a body of work that they can actually use going forward. So And then a question came up from Jane about how do you teach students to do a good
Yeah.
peer review? Because platitudes versus useful feedback. Like how do you address that with all of these?
So, as I mentioned earlier, when I first came to USV, like again, we came up with sort of a peer review protocol, but it was frankly a little bit weak sauce. One of the beauties of that Harmonize does that they have a really robust peer review protocol, and so there's no like the the way students are giving feedback following this protocol is like top shelf. It's really, really good. And a lot of things, what I've done is I'm telling this in front of Marcus, but I've stolen the peer review process that comes out of Harmonize and I've shared it with other faculty because sometimes like they're reluctant. Oh, I don't want to learn a new tool or whatever. And it's like, well, look at this peer reviewed like protocol that we use in Harmonize. Try this in your discussion with the peer review. And they often see that guidelines for the peer review works so well. More often than not, then they come back to me and say, well, will you show me how to use Harmonize then? Because they feel like if that protocol was so good and it could be used in their discussion and it elevated the peer reviews that they were getting, they then sort of like kind of buy into like, oh, maybe Harmonize will do a peer review better. And I do one-on-one faculty and I show them how to do it. And that has been a game changer for us. But that protocol, you can actually include a rubric with it. I rarely do include the rubric because I like what students are coming up with the protocol that Harmonize provides. It's very clear on how to give feedback. It tells students on kind of how to be positive in your feedback, not like, oh, that was terrible. It really just provides a really good guidance. And again, I can say across the board, what I've seen has been really, really excellent feedback from students to each other.
Specifically, you're talking about these instructions here, Allison, is that correct? David, I'm running a screen share or something, but do you want to grab these instructions and throw them into a Google Doc and make it public shareable and drop it into the chat? Is that
Already working on it.
okay? Cool. Yeah, I don't honestly. Whatever makes education better. You want to use the stuff, great. Like you want to use these instructions, great. Like we have people who use our AI rubric generator to generate rubrics, and then they will, because we put them back into Canvas, they go use them with assignments and don't use Harmonize. It's like whatever, great. Like whatever we can do to help is fine
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, I'll get David. David's grabbing these. We'll drop them into a Google Doc and share them out for folks. And I think the feedback I've heard from different folks is like a rubric is important when people are brand new to it and maybe you tried it organically and they just weren't hitting all the points or they weren't doing a great job, and then you can actually have them fill out a rubric, and it will perhaps make more sense for what they're supposed to be doing. But then ideally, since there's no rubrics in the workplace, it's seldom are there rubrics in the workplace, they need to learn to be able to follow instructions and offer constructive feedback as well. To be able to accomplish it. So it's kind of like I like the idea of backing off from the rubric. Once your students have done it, the rubric is almost like a good crutch, but also a good starter, if you will. I don't know if Allison, do you find that with beginners? Do you need it more than not
I
beginners?
actually I only used the rubric once and I found that my students did better without it. And I didn't really do it at the beginning. But what I will say about the peer review is, since again, I do several in all of my classes, and again, we're having peer reviews in almost all of our classes. Not all of our classes are using Harmonize. Some of them are using these guidelines, but I've had faculty say, all right, how do you use this peer review thing? Because my students say they don't like the peer reviews because I'm not giving them good instructions. Because they'll say, oh, just do a peer review. And students don't know what that really means or what to do. So that's where I usually hand off these guidelines to the faculty and say, well, just share these with your students. This is what I'm using. And most of us are using for peer reviews. And faculty sometimes are like a little surprised that the directions for the peer review are that detailed. And it said, well, if you don't give them specifics on how you want, like what it looks like and what it sounds like, you're not going to get what you expect out. So you need to be really specific in how you want students to interact with each other. And generally speaking, if people use this, the response is really positive because, again, most of our faculty are adjuncts. They're amazing, experts in their area of field, but they don't have an education background. And so just saying, do a peer review to them seems like good directions. And so that's why I've been sharing these with other faculties. Like, this is good directions. these are good. This will get you good peer review, and it does. And it's just, again, setting the stage for students on what's expected, what it should sound like and look like.
David reminded me to give a shout out to Alex because she's going to be all warm and fuzzy that her instructions were so well received here in this, in this webinar. All right, so let's open it up for some Q&A, and there were a couple subject areas dumped out here that I'd love to talk about a little bit while we're waiting on questions to come in. And then it looks like about half the folks are using Harmonize in this room. After we're done with all Q&A and we've addressed anything that's not Harmonize specific, I'll jump in and give a demo of the new Harmonize peer review tools because they're available to everyone who's using Harmonize already. If you want to hang out for that point, but when you get past Q&A, for just seeing a demo of it, you're welcome to hang out as well, and we'll go through that. I did see someone mentioned psychology, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, psychology. We had some folks that were doing peer review on running an actual experiment. Like they did an actual recording of them role playing as if they were running an experiment with a subject, and what kind of guidelines they had to follow to do that in a non-biasing way as well. And then they were critiquing each other. So that was a great use of being on video, so you could hear the tone, you could hear the questions, which were important to that example, and then they were getting each other to critique it. And the same thing applied to nursing, where they were doing triage practice of like trying to pull someone in and understand what they were actually talking about as well. So super cool there. I don't know, healthcare leadership probably isn't doing the nurse triage, but that's what healthcare triggered in me, with people were doing that as well. Okay, any questions for Allison on non-harmonized stuff? Otherwise, we can pivot into harmonized specifics. Or Allison, was there anything else in the notes that I missed?
Yeah. I just want to be like, we kind of skipped over the English because I feel like a lot of people just feel that
Oh, right. Yeah.
is the gold standard in terms of peer review. And yes, and so let me give you a couple of examples. So in our English classes, what they're doing, in our professional writing class, they're creating resumes and they're creating cover letters. And so, and I think this goes back to one of the AI tools. The first instructions are create your resume and your cover letter for this particular job using AI. And they share that with each other. And so they start to see how AI really sort of makes everybody's cover letter and resume look the same. And so then they actually generate their own cover letter and resume, and they're getting feedback from each other on their cover letter about how well it's written, how it's responding to the job, formatting on their resume. Can you change these things in their resume? I'm going to be teaching of this we're running out an English 101 kind of a short class that I'm going to be helping with. Each week, the students are picking like an argumentative essay. And so they are sharing those drafts with each other and getting feedback on, not only the structure, the content, and in terms of what should be included in an argumentative essay. So every time they have a big essay due, there is at least one or two peer reviews. First one is like a first draft, and then nearing final draft, and they get feedback. Again, it's just using that peer review process. So by the time I get to grade it, I have a really good thing to grade. It's not like I am spending most of my time doing like ticky-tacky editing and things like that. It's really looking at it from a perspective of an argumentative essay. Do they have the components, and like identifying those pieces? So again, it's a time saver for me because students are doing those reviews with each other early on, which just makes it the final product that I get is just so much better.
Very cool. All right, last chance for questions, or actually questions can come in at any point now that I don't have to. We can always come back to them. I'm going to show you, someone asked earlier about video specific peer review. I'm going to show you, I think I'm logged in as a student. Am I? I am, yes, logged in as a student. So I busted it out of a Canvas window so people weren't distracted from Canvas for those that don't use it. But for those that are familiar with Harmonize, it's going to look very similar to the discussion tool, but this is just with a formalized peer review layer on top of it. And it's important to give your students these multiple deadlines, which we will do by default, so that they can get their work in early enough. So if you're going to use standard discussions, this is something to focus on and be very clear with your students. There can't just be one due date, because you need to get enough work in early so that you have time for the peer review processes to happen. So keep that in mind if you're using standard discussions. We set them up as multiple due dates so that you don't have to do that. But and then another thing to think about is that there really are two sets of instructions for what you're doing for your peer review. There is what is the instructions for what is the activity that you're supposed to be submitting, but then there's a whole different set of instructions on like what does it mean to do a good peer review as well. And so we break these into two sections and show them accordingly to what the student needs to see. So that's something to think about when if you're doing this in just a standard discussion, like how do you break apart these instructions and make it clear that there is both the instructions for what you're building, presentation or whatever, as well as the instructions for how to do a good peer review. For a lot of this multimodal peer review stuff, some things to think about. So let me scroll to the top here. I'm continuing a peer review that I'm completing. So I am reviewing Laverne's work. She submitted multiple artifacts, papers, images, PDF of her slides, videos, PowerPoint presentations. This one is kind of a mishmash of everything. So you can think about what it looks like. You don't have to submit just one aspect. You can have them write an essay and submit a video reflection of the essay, of a screen share of the essay, so that you have additional artifacts to dig into. If you are doing rubric grading, this is where you can kind of structure their feedback into a rubric format. This is the thing that Allison doesn't use tons because you run the risk of this, like, oh yeah, it said everything I needed to do. Nice work, great work, etc. But also provide structure of making sure that they're actually thinking about all the different things, and you can ask them to do more than just say good work, etc.
That's exactly why I kind of shy away from the rubric for students. David, I want to just, or Marcus, I just want to talk about one other thing in the video that you had up there too. I limit sometimes the length of the video because after students do these for a while, especially my speech teacher does this too, students really want to kind of like, they keep going. And so I do limit it because it's like, come on, guys, nobody's going to watch a 15-minute video of you critiquing something. So you need to be like, and again, in a work environment, you're not going to have 15 minutes to say your piece. You need to be really concise and precise with your language. And so most of us do limit the length of the video that they can do, because that also ensures people are going to watch their videos as well.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with, if you're using Harmonize in the settings, you can actually limit the amount of both video minute and presentation minutes so that your students aren't doing that. But yeah, strongly recommend that, because if you have 30 students and you were hoping to watch their PowerPoint presentations and they're 12 minutes a piece.
Yeah, I forgot to do that with one of my physics ones, and I had two that turned, and they were excellent. Don't get me wrong. He did an amazing job for 22 minutes, but at 22 minutes in finals week, I didn't really have that much time to watch videos. So yeah.
Lost all the gains you had from workload by watching that. All right, so when you get into critiquing these things, if you're doing line item critiques is built into Harmonize. If you're not using Harmonize, I recommend doing something like Google Docs. Like you can do line item critiques in Google Docs anonymously, and Harmonize is built in, select things, leave your commentary, type of thing for written work. But it's often important to allow these detailed critiques of what you're doing. So if you're using the standard discussion to do this, I would recommend pushing the things out into a Google Doc, because then you can highlight and comment anonymously. Or otherwise, does require a Google account to do. I think you might be able to do it anonymous without. I'm not sure. For anything you're doing visual, like having your students, if they aren't doing it in Harmonize, have them pull it in and draw on the images and critique them. I've seen this especially useful for diagramming of database classes and stuff like that. Being able to do critique of imagery is important. The one that was asked about in the chat was video stuff, and I think this one is I think Feedback Fruits does this, where they can do timestamp commentary on video. I know we do it. I'm not sure about the other two peer review tools. If anyone knows of a free tool that lets you upload videos and leave timestamp commentary, maybe they could even push it out to YouTube and do commentary in that way. I don't know. But being able to watch someone's video and actually pause it at specific points in time and leave comments on it as you go, as you're watching, so then you can pick up and have them, have them play it, and at any point in time be like, I'm watching, I don't have much to say. And then I can pause it and be like, oh, another great point here, but you said, oops. I hit the wrong key there, but you said too many times, type of thing. Getting the students to do this level of critique ensures that they're watching the things to some degree. So if you're putting it on the students and be like, look, when you write your comments, just list more or less where the minute you said it was going to be, so the students can jump back into their own video and see what you're talking about, but also ensures that they've watch the video to some degree instead of just throwing it into chat and hoping chat can read the video or not, as well as you're going into it.
Canvas Studio will do that to some extent. You can put
Nice.
a video in Canvas. The only problem with that is, I mean, it does kind of the same thing, is that when you want to grade, like the beauty of this is that it pops up in SpeedGrader. So you have everything here. So if it's in Studio, I am either listing it separately or I'm trying to putting out an assignment page, but it tends to be just a lot more clunky on how to grade it that way.
Got it.
And I feel like the other piece of this is to do a peer review is figuring out ways to do it that is not like you're not trying to piecemeal so many things together. It's kind of why we landed initially on using the discussions, because everyone was familiar with things there and it was there, versus trying to find a lot of different things. And so one piece is here, one piece is here, and it just makes your grading so much more difficult. And even for students, then they're kind of getting lost in what the breadcrumbs are to get them where they need to be.
Got it. Heather asked a question about what I was doing here of annotating a document. This is built into Harmonize. This is a Harmonize feature. Canvas peer review, if you can bully your way through all of the logistics of it, also does this, but it only shows you, I don't remember exactly, in the grading interface, it doesn't show you everything you want to see. It shows you other students' comments on your grading Bob. It shows you other students' comments on Bob's work, but you can't go see what Bob did on other students' work. So there's some ambiguity there in terms of what it is. And if I leave the really, as what you want is to find a tool that, and I'm guessing the other peer review tools do this as well, to where like if you open something up in your grade book and we look at a particular student who has it done, you see not only their work that is being reviewed by other people. So I can see like, here's Edith's work and here's, and I could go look at the 2 reviews on her work, but also here is Edith's reviews of other people's work, because that's also an important part of what Edith has done here. So if you're evaluating tools, take a look for something like this, asking about it.
And just another feature that, because Marcus is showing this, in this case, the peer reviews are set up as anonymously, but you can choose whether to have your peer reviews anonymous or not. Initially, I do a few and then I start shifting. It's like, again, in the real world, you don't get to hide behind something when you want to give feedback. So if you feel that strongly about it, you need to put your name on it. So I have changed all mine at this point in the year to not anonymous. Not anonymous.
Well, and I will say, like, this is split pretty evenly 50-50 on what people want to do. Like, some people are like, oh, I would never do it non-anonymously. And other people are like, oh, I would never do it anonymously. And it's like we can almost set up little Eggian versus big Eggian type of big Indian type of arguments going on. But yeah, it's either way, whatever works best for you from a psychology perspective or a comfort perspective, especially if you're dealing with something where you think they're going to be shy about giving feedback, maybe start with anonymous and then be like, hey, that wasn't so bad, was it? Now we're going to do it non-anonymously or what have you. I feel like I feel like non-anonymous is a skill they need to learn, because in the workplace, I don't give my feedback anonymously. I'm like, hey, my name's Marcus. Here's what I think, type of thing. David's like, yes, he does. But I've learned to be polite and such about it. And
yeah. I also find that since I've switched now, and I don't, like in the first part of the year, I do saying do anonymous, there we go. And now I've switched to the non-anonymous. I feel like the feedback might even have like ramped up a little, because now that name is associated with the feedback. So I don't want so-and-so thinking that I don't give very good feedback. So they're a little bit more cognizant of it, because somebody can see who gave them the feedback. And I've never had a pushback from students that around, I want to stay anonymous. Not a single student has ever pushed back on that.
That's actually interesting. That's good to know. So let's see what else to cover. There was a little bit of discussion. David, go ahead.
Yeah, Allison, I was going to say in the beginning when we were doing the sharing, there was a part about, the difficulty of grading peer reviews. And I was wondering maybe you could touch on that a little bit, and maybe also talk about, do you ever use the auto grading feature within peer review that Harmonize has, and when do you use that or when not?
Yeah, so you have to have the auto grading is a peer review, or is a part of the peer review. So it basically takes your points and just sort of splits them, although you can change that. I always tell students that it's going to like automatically grade you and tell you that you're going to get 50 points, but I get the ultimate call on really if you do get 50 points. So for the very first peer reviews, just to get them used to doing them, I do them anonymous, and then whatever the period, the grade split is, I let it auto grade. Down the road, I then will be a little, I have the liberty to change their grade if I need to, but I don't want them getting into like being fearful that their peer review isn't going to be good enough for a grade. I just sort of said, as long as you're following the directions and doing that, you're gonna get it. So, but you do have to set the peer review up as anonymous grading to get it to trigger for the next person. But I always reserve the right to change grades. So
yeah. And what we like to think of this as, so when we talk to people about this, is like most people grade for participation, in all honesty, in peer review. It's like, did you get it done? Did you do what I asked you to do? Because it's all about the process of reviewing each other that's important. And in these formative stages, even if you give wrong feedback, you tried to give feedback, and I can step in and be like, well, that was actually wrong. What a great learning opportunity type of thing. But you did look at their work. You tried to think about it. You tried to give feedback type of thing. And so that's what this auto grading does. It just gives grades based on did you accomplish this? Did you write the right number of words? Those types of things. There is some research, and this is one of the reasons we put a default word count in. If you're not using a rubric, it's like length does correlate with quality. So if you are asking your students to do some peer reviews on a non-rubric basis, we set up a 200 word count minimum for that. You can change it, but that's something to think about as well. Like, ask them to actually write more, because if they are doing written responses versus video and such, then the amount of writing does correlate with quality. It doesn't cause quality, but correlates with quality.
and I would say that students actually do more. I've had students like message me like over the weekend, like, oh, I did my thing, but I gave more than 200 words. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay.
Minimum.
Don't
minimum
sweat
200
it.
words.
Don't sweat it, kids. But like sometimes when I do mine too, if like there's, let's say it's 100 points, like I said, when you set it up, you split those points between the submission of the assignment and the peer review. And I tend to like make the submission of the assignment less points and the peer review more, because again, it's a little bit of a motivating factor that the peer review is really the key
important part.
What we're looking at right now.
Yeah, we had lots of arguments internally about how to split it, and we finally were just like 50-50. Instructors can change it if they want, because we couldn't come up with the right answer. All right, any questions for us? Because we only have about 3 minutes left, so we're not going to get into a new topic. Maybe someday we'll do a AI as a first round of feedback, because we have some of that built in, but we don't have time to discuss it right now. But maybe something for a future webinar. Any last questions before we close out? Allison, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I just say try a peer review. Even if you try something in a discussion, I think you're going to find the engagement of your students ramps up with it, because they really like hearing from each other more than anything. And it's just been, for me, it's been a real game changer. Like, I try to do several every term because they do enjoy it.
David did put out in the chat, he's much better at reminding people that we do sell software, reminding me that we do sell software. You can have a free pilot of Harmonize for a semester to try it out, see if it works for you, see if the peer review tools work for you. We set them up and let you run them as much as you want, so you can decide if it's a tool that works for you. So he dropped a link into the chat for that. Thank you, David, for reminding me of that. And you can go check it out and set it. We're happy to talk to you about it. If you're not a Harmonize customer, it looked like about half the folks in here were already Harmonize customers. So hopefully that was useful. For the Harmonize customers in the room, we do offer peer review specific trainings since it's a newer tool. So if you do want us to set up an hour-long session for you and your instructors who are considering it, just hit us up, support at Harmonize Learning, or reach out to me or Alex or anyone you know, and we can get that set up for you so that we can train your instructors on what to expect, how it's going to do the setup for them, those types of things. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody. And stay tuned for future webinars. And Allison, once again, thank you so much. That was your expertise and your sort of down to earth talking about practicalities as always plays well in webinars. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for the invite today. So it's great being with you guys.
I appreciate everybody. Bye.